Here's a clip from Tarabuster with Tara Devlin.
Matson and Tawni Browning. That's who we will be talking with in a few minutes. Matson Browning and... Wait, hold on. He says perfect. Okay. Matson is an internationally recognized authority on the inner workings of white supremacy groups. An undercover detective for more than 2 decades in Arizona. He thought he knew what hate looked like. That is, until he got a front row seat. For more than 25 years, Browning has been infiltrating, documenting, and disrupting white supremacy movements from the inside, gaining an intimate vantage point to the KKK, skinheads, border militias, Proud Boys, and other white power groups as they organized, grew their ranks, including in the police force and military veterans. Along with his intrepid wife, Tawni, he adopted fake IDs and ideologies, seeking the arrest of its hate group participants, none more so than J.T. Reddy, a neo-Nazi who took hunting trips, so to speak, for border migrants while gaining mainstream acceptance as a political candidate and terrorizing Browning's family. What others dismissed as fringe groups, Browning quickly recognized as a large and interconnected organizations permeating every facet of American society, effectively spreading their dangerous and repugnant rhetoric at unprecedented speeds. Now, with the violent polarization of our communities and an increase in hate crimes, the threat posed by these toxic organizations feels as acute as ever. So Tawni Browning considers herself first and foremost a mother of 5. Beyond that, she was the supervising and casting producer for A&E's Escaping Polygamy, a series documenting the trials and struggles of individuals attempting to leave the cult life of polygamy. For years, Tawni has been assisting her husband in the investigations of numerous skinhead organizations. With her covert investigation tactics, Tawni was most instrumental in shutting down one of the world's largest and most violent skinhead organizations. Tawni continues to gather intelligence on various individuals and religious extremists throughout the world. And they're coming on this show. These are very impressive people, everybody. How do I look? I look okay? I'm only kidding. Yes. Epstein didn't kill himself. I mean, come on. Should I call him now? It's a couple of minutes early. I just did the intro. I thought I would do the intro before I loop them in. So we wouldn't, I don't know. So they wouldn't have to sit there and feel embarrassed. Why would they be embarrassed? They'd be blushing as I heap accolades on them. Let me just get my documents in order. I wrote a lot of questions down. All right? I did a lot of research. So hopefully this will be a good interview. I know I'm interested in... And guys, I want you to help me out here, too. In the chat. Whatever you have, if you have a question for the Brownings, please post it in the chat. And I'll ask them. All right? Wow. Okay. It's only 3 minutes left. Why did I tell him 7 minutes? I should have just said I'll call you in a couple of minutes. Because everything flies by. Time flies on this show. And I guess now it's dragging because I'm watching the clock. So they have previously appeared on CNN, MSNBC, NPR, and their work has been featured in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Their expertise and journalistic rigor make them ideal guests for the Tarabuster show. That's for sure. Now they have reached the pinnacle of success on Tarabuster. Okay, all right, we got it. Nice to meet you guys. You guys look amazing. I love you both. I love that picture that your press people sent. You live in such a beautiful land, it seems, and where are you based, if you're.
We're in Arizona, but we're having a real hard time hearing you, Tara.
Uh-oh. You are. I hear you perfectly. Let me
Okay,
see.
we'll make this work then.
And let me ask the guys on the chat. Guys, how does it sound? They always have to give me the feedback. If you're here in 2 minutes, let me see. There's a little bit of a delay. So we'll hear if I mean, you sound as clear as a bell. So what does it sound like for you? You just
like you're underwater.
Oh.
Yeah, we could hear you perfectly on, we were just
when you were listening. Okay.
But we're good. We'll make it work. We're good.
Oh, they say I'm very loud. That's because I just raised myself because all right. Well, let's try. Let's see if we'll make it work. Other than that, it sounds good, they're saying. So they can hear you. If you can't hear something, just tell me to repeat it or whatever, and we'll make it work. Let me lower myself a little here. All right. Yes. Well, I did it. I told the chat room, your amazing resume, and I just don't know how you do it. How did you get involved with going undercover in these groups?
How did I? Well,
yes.
For me, it was a job. I was hired as a police officer, and then I had the first skinhead that I ever came in contact with try to kill me, and so that kind of, it drew me in. It made me want to figure out what was going on. And then from that one incident, it just turned into years and years and decades of working these guys.
Right.
And there was more than that. I mean, he was working the gang unit, and
yeah, it's the focus. My focus, even though I was working gangs and intel, my focus was always in the extreme. So I was working with border militias. I was working with militias and white supremacy and the Klan, Aryan nations, all the big groups. But what it comes down to, and that's why we wrote it, the book is titled "The Hate Next Door," because we really don't know who is next door to us.
Right.
And that's what I found out through my journey and my undercover work is I had no idea that this stuff was all around us.
Right. And that's one other question. What kind of a person joins these groups, and how do they get involved in these groups?
How does a normal person get involved? That's a great question. And I mean, there's so many different ways a person can get involved. They can get involved through music, through family members, through friends. They could be jumped and beat up by a gang, and so they develop a hatred towards a specific ethnicity or race. Politics suck people in. There's all kinds of different things going on right now that brings people into this world of hate on both sides, not just the far right, but on both sides.
Right. Because I'm always under the impression, and I referenced some studies that people low IQ people are attracted to these groups, people who are not that smart. But you in your book mentioned, these are people from all walks of life, some very impressive and well-read and well-educated people as well.
That was one of the things, Tara, that made me just really made me take pause, is because I thought we were talking backwoods, knuckle dragging, people that couldn't really string together, too many words into a sentence, and that just wasn't the case. Some of these were our kids, kids that I'm like, how did this ever happen? And when there's that void, we can't, that need to belong, you got, they're going to feel it somewhere. And I hope that we can feel it in our communities rather than with hate.
Right.
And two, I had one guy who's a member of the National Socialist Movement whose parents were attorneys and surgeons, and so it's not always your broken homes and non-educated people. These are, it's just that little seed gets into your head, and then they jump down that rabbit hole, and next thing you know, we have mass shootings, or we have assaults, or we have, we were listening to earlier about JT Reddy. JT really did hunting trips, physically loaded up his vehicle, went to the border, went camping, went scouting, and went on hunting trips for illegal immigrants.
Wow.
So that's what they do. They just jump on whatever makes them feel good.
And I'm sure he had to get to a level where these people were dehumanized for him to just, as you're saying, go on a hunting trip for other human beings is pretty repugnant. Do these people know that they're in a hate group? That's one thing I have a question. Do they call themselves a hate group? Do they realize this is a hate group?
Well, as a guy who grew up not hating anybody, and I grew up around all different races, when I became members of these groups, I knew that they were hate groups. I mean, every word is anti-black, anti-Jew, anti-Mexican. Every word is how are we going to take over and how are we going to stop? And yeah, I think they do. When you become a member of one of these organizations, you know that you're out there promoting hate.
Wow. Yes. And so what do you think that, like we were saying with the people who join these groups, what are the common misconceptions in general that you found about white supremacy? And also, I was also wondering, because you were involved with different groups too, right? The Proud Boys, the Nazi, like you're saying, the American Nazi Party and whatnot. Did you stay undercover for all of these groups? And
yeah, I was undercover for, I think we did our last undercover gig not too long ago.
Wow.
I can't go undercover anymore.
Right, you're out.
Out and we're doing this type stuff, but
wow.
It's the ideology is all the same.
Mm-hmm.
The ideology of hate is all the same. If you hate the Mexicans, you hate the blacks. If you hate the blacks and Mexicans, you're going to throw in some Jews you're going to hate also. It's all the same. And once you get that ideology and then you put the rhetoric that you're spewing and talking, you're creating the violence. And so and that's why they're all the same. The problem with the white nationalist, white supremacy world is that there's nobody really willing to step up and take leadership, thank goodness, and start this momentum going faster.
Right, because so when you were infiltrating these groups, were these people, and what I'm trying to say, I guess, is it's a small world out there. So they must like have cross pollination of different members, right? I mean, wouldn't you run into each other at events? And
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all the same, because you can be a member of the National Alliance and you can be in Unit 88 Skin, or you can be in Aryan Nations at a Christian identity movement. You could be World Church Creator, but your best friend could be Aryan Nations. That's why it goes back to hate is hate is hate.
Right.
You can, whatever label you want to put on it, you can put on it, but it's all the same ideology and it's all the same rhetoric. Right. So it's all the same understanding.
And Tara, that's another thing that I just found so crazy is that the women, there were just so few women to go around that those women would be passed around from group to group, from member to member, and then group to group. And it was, I'm not trying to be detrimental, but that's just kind of what happened. And I just felt like it was just such a toxic environment, not just because it was so hate-filled, but in that environment for the young women that were involved as well.
Right, because it must be a very patriarchal society in these groups where women are, everything's about a hierarchy, and when it comes down to it, and everybody should know their place. And you're saying like women were being passed around, and what would make a woman? I know because you were involved with the polygamist groups.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So is it the same kind of mindset in these, from a cult to these white supremacist groups? Is it sort of like the same?
That was so shocking. I keep saying it was so shocking, but it was so shocking that, it was next door. I'd go to work, working with these polygamist groups, and the hate-filled rhetoric and the same kinds of thoughts were it was like same people, different pants. Wow. It just there was so much crossover. And one girl that was leaving, she had an iron cross tattooed on her arm, and I asked her if she knew what that meant. The fact that she was leaving, or else she wouldn't have a tattoo, but And she did. She was dating a guy that was involved in the nationalist movement. So that's when my eyes were like, wow, there's a lot of crossover here in the two
Right.
places. You would think they're miles away, but really it's like the more you learn, the more things are the same.
Right.
But religion is a huge motivator when it comes to nationalism and hate. And you wouldn't think that religion would have anything to do with hate, but religion is a big motivation within the hate movement.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. How is that even rationalized with them?
Well, because the Jews killed Jesus, and so that creates that whole movement. Then you have the Christian identity where they talk about Cain and Abel and the skin color and the changing of the races and how the blacks were expelled from everybody else. That feeds into the Christian identity movement. You have the Odinism and Asatru that's thrown into the whole mix. And it's all based upon, if you die in battle, you go to Valhalla, you hang out with the Valkyries, you party all night, and then you fight all day. Wow. And that's all religious-based thinking. And so that's why when a lot of these guys, when we have these members like, Timothy McVeigh, he had no worries at all about killing all those people, because in his mind, he was going to go to Valhalla and he was going to be a martyr. David Lane, another a martyr. Robert Matthews, another martyr. There's martyrs all over the white nationalist movement, and it's all based upon this religious belief that they are going to be exalted above everybody else.
Right. It's incredible. What kind of a toll, though, does this take on you when you're hanging out with these people and have to pretend and jump in and, it must take a psychological toll. But.
Well, I don't want to spoil the book for people who haven't read it, but yeah, we talk a lot about the psychological toll, not only on me, but on law enforcement that's involved in working these type things. The problem you have is there's a quote that if you're going to start hanging out with monsters, you better make sure you don't become one. And I was lucky because I had Tawni, who when I would finish my undercover work or my whatever my gig was for that day, I would come home and Tawni would help me process it, walk through it, talk about it, and realize that, that's that world. That's your undercover world. But this world you're in right now, you're safe. You're at home. You're with me and the kids.
It must be frightening, though. Did you ever get scared they might, figure you out, that you weren't one of them, let's say?
Did they ever figure me out?
Or did you ever get scared, it must have been hanging over your head.
And I was never really afraid for us, because Matt kind of was our protector, and some weird compartmentalization in my mind and in the kids' mind. But I know there were times that you were nervous about that.
Well, the I don't want to call it fear, but my concern was not by a skinhead or a militia member outing me as Detective Matt Browning. My fear was always a member of another law enforcement agency who is there on his own time knows me. He would out me to the people I'm trying to go undercover with. And you got to look at it this way too. You have to have a criminal predicate to work in organization. And within my undercover days and the time that I was working these groups, I locked up 19 guys for murder and attempted murder in Arizona alone. Wow. There was always the violence potential was so strong, and it was always there. But my fear wasn't for that. My fear was for being outed to other cops who were then going to burn me to these guys that then would come around and see who I was. And we talked about that in the book. There was an incident where I was teaching at the police academy, and one of the recruits was hanging out with these guys.
Oh my God.
And he showed up at my house.
Wow. That's scary. And because you got to think, as you're saying, these are law enforcement professionals, and they're there because they're like, gee, they have a point, because they're part of these groups. And did you find that to be, I know you mentioned some of that in the book about how some military and law enforcement were, true believers in this.
It's very frustrating, because what they do is they take the tactics that they learn whether it's officer safety or close quarter combat, firearms, and they then turn those tactics over to people who have no business learning how to hurt other people.
Right.
And that's why, for me, how can you go and protect when you're actively hating on the other side of your
exactly, and
life?
especially in a country that is a multiracial democracy. And I suppose that's part of their problem. They don't like that. And I guess, they want everybody in their place or whatever. But did you ever think that, let's say, these people were just buffoons, or are they, real, are they just idiots, but not, like violent, let's say?
Here's what I did. I when I was talking about these, and I called them idiots or buffoons or morons
right.
or inept, and my mom pulled me aside and said, Matt, don't talk like that. You can't talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as realistic and true as it is, if you put the label of buffoon or moron on these guys, it takes away that these are really violent people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we just keep it where it's at, they are extremely violent. The skinheads would go on hunting trips where they jump in a car and drive around the city and look for minorities, jump out of their cars and beat them senseless, stabbing at times, and then they leave to go find another victim. These are extremely violent people who are built on rage and hate.
That is terrifying, really, because that's what they do as a pastime, basically, go around and beat people up. But they're beating up white people in many cases, right? They're beating them up for not being white or something, white enough.
Well, what they do, like if a white girl's walking with a black man, they'll beat up the white girl first, then they'll beat up the black guy. Wow. Because it goes back to the 14 words by David Lane that we have to protect the future of our children and the future of the white race.
Oh God!
And that's what they're trying to do in their mind. They're fixing the white race by getting rid of the non-pure, and that's how they do it. They do it by violence and by assaults and other intimidations, and that's how they operate.
So and in the book, there was a story, Tawni, about you taking a picture of somebody's tattoo and them finding or being because the flash went off or something like that. Is that?
Yeah, that was Chris Simcox. He was one of the leaders of the Minutemen down at the border. And I always try to take a picture of Matt with whoever we're with, somehow covertly, overtly, somewhere, so that they can't say they never met with him or they didn't know him or whatever we're in. But yeah, we were sitting at dinner. We're having a steak, and I was across from Chris Simcox, and I went to take a picture, and the flash was on my phone, so it wasn't so covert. And I'm like, I'm sorry, new phone, that kind of thing. And because I'm me, and I don't necessarily look or act like a undercover operative, he kind of bought it. But that was one of those moments where it was like, oh, yeah. And you were like, oh, Tawni, he was just like, he could not believe I did that. But we've had lots of things like that happen.
It
makes it fun.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's, or
dumb, or really, really dumb.
Yeah, just you can't even imagine how you decompress from this, from going from one world to another. And do you ever feel like we're done? We don't have any hope. We're never going to change these people. Is there any hope with this? It's very depressing, really.
Well, I think the hope comes from what we as a community decide to do. When I started on this journey, I thought that I could take hate completely out of this world, and that through our supremacist intelligence network, we could change the way the law enforcement looks at hate and how we work hate. But unfortunately, it's like, we have cold water and we have hot water. We have, there's opposites in everything. And the reason why we have hate is because we have love. And if we take out hate, then there's going to have to be some type of opposite somewhere. So I think what we need to do is work together with our communities and do our best to teach our kids, teach our political leaders, our religious leaders, our educators. Listen, we need to come together and explain that yes, we're all different, and we all are. Our families come from different areas of this world, but we're all the same, man. We all want to be successful.
That's true.
We all want to survive.
We all want to take care of our children.
We want to take care of our kids.
Exactly.
And that's what it's about. You know, I might like dogs, you might like cats, but we don't have to argue with each other about which one's better.
They're all better. They're all great.
I call him that was his young lion phase, you know, when he was going to just change everything and make it all perfect. And now he's a wiser, older, a wise lion.
Right.
And really, we've found that there's something we can all do it starts with our mindset and our hearts. And there is something that we're all uniquely able to do to fight hate. Right. And I mean, just changing the trajectory. Sorry.
It's okay.
Just our thought process can change a whole lot. We have a lot of, you know, influence in places that all of us, that we don't even recognize, and where we're uniquely able and capable to fight hate.
Have you been able to, let's say, you know, pull somebody from the brink, or reach one of these participants?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, our tracker, we have quite a few people. I continue to have sources that give me information. You know, we've helped people. Tawni's helped, you know, people get college educated, help them out of prisons.
That's great.
We've helped another guy get on with his life by starting he wanted a camera so he could start a business, and we said, all right. So we give him the camera, and he was able to, I mean, he's doing great now.
That's
and
amazing.
So it's just the little things. Yeah. And just because somebody's part of one of these groups doesn't mean they can't change.
Right.
And
there is a way out. There is a way out.
There's definitely a way out, but that way out, it kind of hurts because they have to look at what they've done, and they have to sit and they have to go through the processes in their mind. You know, it's the whole, you know, just talking themselves through it, and then going and talking to people that they've hurt and offended, and asking for forgiveness.
Right.
And, sometimes those guys are just sources that I think it's pendants for them a little bit. They'll give Matt all kinds of information, and they've actually done a lot to help us get inside these groups even deeper, into places that you can't get unless you know the top. I mean, I don't want to say too much, but yeah, there's been guys that, you know, were out, but their crew didn't know they were out.
Wow.
So, you know, who were trying to make right what was so evil and wrong. And I'm not sure you can ever make it right, but they were doing what they knew to do.
At least they woke up, right? I mean, but I guess because you get what they get from it, you know, like we join groups, you get a sense of community, you get a sense of belonging. So getting out of that, there has to be some other alternative, I would imagine. You know, there has to be an option, like you're saying. You know, love and hate, but there, you know,
create that void. You have to put something else into it. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to. There's always that's why education is so good for these guys, because then they can go learn a trade and they can start living their lives. There's a lot. I mean, reading a lot of it. Man, it goes back to what we said. These guys aren't stupid people. You know, and some of them are. But really not. I mean, they're really well-read people. They're just reading the wrong stuff.
Right. Those people terrify me. I would rather have them stupid, you know, with the face tattoos or whatever, you know, and so you could just see them, you know, point them out in a crowd. The ones who are the educated and well-read, and those are the ones that scare me, you know, because they could attract more people. You know, they're like, gee, that sounds pretty.
They do. And it's Tawni has a new show coming out called The Secrets of Polygamy. It comes out next week. But
cool.
They call it a secret for a reason. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be known. And that goes with anybody. If somebody's keeping a secret, there's something going on. Right. And so the face tattoos, instant identifier, the 88, the 14, the swastika tattoos, instant identifier. And that's why a lot of these guys are going away from that. We're hiding that because they don't want to be seen, but they want to be able to still go out and influence and pull people into their cause.
Right. And that's why. Oh, sorry, Tawni.
We wrote the book is because I knew one guy that had a huge swastika on his back, on a back piece. He had it tattooed on his back.
Oh, boy.
But he would date mainstream girls, and they didn't know what they were dating until that shirt came off.
Oh, boy. Wow.
And so, you know, it's like, so and then they thought, oh, it's not so bad. This guy's good. He speaks the King's English. He's a good dude.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so much deeper than that. And we were hoping that people, if they knew what they were getting into, they would turn around as soon as that shirt came off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would be shocking, really. I would. But speaking of, influencing, what do you think the role of social media? I feel like social media is like a cesspool, and it's horrible. Well, these people, they're finding each other. It's making it harder, to stamp down hate.
Social media is doing nothing, in my opinion. I mean, social media has this good. I mean, I'm into high school football and college football. Social media is great for that. I can see who's winning games. But I can also look on social media and say, I can indoctrinate myself in Mein Kampf, or I can go and learn about what's going on in Europe with the terrorist side of what they're doing and the reasons why they're blowing up the World Trade Centers and things like that. But social media has its pros and cons. I personally am not a big fan of it because I think guys are self-indoctrinating and going and doing mass shootings.
Yeah,
we've seen it.
Yes,
we've seen that has been a cause, or has been a way for these guys to go out and learn, and then go out and do a shooting. And we got to do something about it. So parents need to be part of their kids' social media. They have to know what's going on. They have to put the limits on their cell phone or iPad or whatever use. There's just things that we need to do to get more involved.
And I have a hard time with this because we have 5 kids. And so we know that that's not just, hey, parents, be involved. It's not just that simple. But we really do, as parents, have to be involved. And it would be my hope that we can give kids a sense of belonging, a sense of a place to go, so that they're not on their phones looking for the scores of the high school games and not being indoctrinated into hate groups. So give that kid a lacrosse stick. Give that kid a paintbrush, something so that they find that sense of belonging in our schools and our communities and not in a hate group.
Right. So, I mean, the title of your book, The Hate Next Door, it makes you think of, you don't really know who is around, and how prevalent are these groups? Are they hiding in plain sight, or, and then they get together and let their hair down, kind of thing?
Here's the way I look at it. I hate the cycle of hate is like a roller coaster. You go up and you're at your peak, and then you go back down, and that build-up part is going to be your violent attacks, and then all of a sudden it gets to the top, and then you have Charlottesville, and then it goes down because everybody's worried about Charlottesville, and so the groups and leaders will go underground, and they're trying to get new leadership and trying to build and trying to recruit, and that's the going up start, and then you're going to have something happen that's going to make it go back down again, and it's just up to us to recognize that thing. So are the hate groups around? Yes. If we don't see them, it's because they're building and recruiting and growing. And we need to just be aware of that. And we need to be aware of, they all have their identifiers, whether it's boots and braces or khakis and camo. They have their ideologies, whether it's, the Jews are taking over the world or immigration is destroying our country. They all have the same things that they're keying off of. And so it's our job to make sure that we can see that and we can understand what's going on.
Right. So what's the message really? What do you hope people take away when they read your book? What's the impression you hope they take with them?
2 things. Number 1, well, more than 2. I want people to be aware of what's going on. Awareness is key in combating anything. We need to be aware of what our kids are being taught. We need to be aware of what we're being taught. We need to understand that not everything that's coming out from social media or our politicians or whoever else is legitimate information, and we need to check it out for ourselves. And another thing is that we need to know that hate is real and hate is alive. And we need to come together as communities. And that's why at the back of The Hate Next Door, we have, a chapter dedicated to the signs and symbols that you can look for and understand that if your son or daughter comes home from school and they have a 14 drawn on their notebook, they know what it stands for.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's kind of a red flag, right? I would imagine. So
I didn't really want to write the book, but what I would hope that people would get is so that we can get in front of some of this stuff before it becomes so toxic and deep that we're hurting each other. You know, that we can have these conversations, that parents know what to talk about, that coaches know what to talk to their students about. You know, that's what I was hoping, is that we could get in front of it. And then if parents found their children involved in this, or spouses, that they would know that they're not alone, and that there is a way out. That I would hope that it would be hopeful, and it would get the conversations started, like this conversation right here with you today, Tara.
I hope
is that
so,
we could talk about it and maybe talk deeper within our own homes and communities.
Right, and hope to, stop this hate, really. I mean, because there's no hope in that. And
we're seeing it in our country. You know, there's just so much polarization, and there has been for years. But it just seems, it's like, how far are we going to go?
Yeah.
Let's bring this back together, because we can. And that's what we were hoping. Some of that conversation would spill over into that, in just the smallest of ways, the small and simple ways. Maybe we could start making a difference back to, you know, where we need, and I think most of us want to be.
Right. I think so too. I even think that the people who are in these groups, they are suffering in some way. Because how could you really be happy like that? It's impossible.
Well, that's why I say, these guys, they wake up in the morning and they're hating. They go through their day, they're hating. They go to bed at night hating, and then they start that whole cycle over and over again. And it leads to nothing but destruction and violence and jail time and destroying everything that you're about. And that's what we're trying to stop. We don't need that to happen. We need to understand that the words that we say matter, and the words that we say are harmful or they're good, and we need to decide to use the good words, not we don't need to go out and say stuff to motivate other people to do bad things.
Right. Because I think, so I love history, and I study, not in a college, but in my own life, the rise of the Third Reich and rise and fall. And there's a lot of correlations and parallels to what we're witnessing today, which is chilling. But one thing that always struck me is that the Nazis would do these horrible things, and they would say they were doing it for love, for love of their country, that they would do these, crimes against humanity. And, there's this twisted, ideology that is turning everything on its head. And, it never ends well. That's the thing. It never ends well. Racism, this division, it doesn't work. That's, so I think that what you're doing, it's important, and we need to continue having these conversations and hopefully, change some minds, because it must be, like we were saying, it's exhausting for these people to carry this hate all the time. It's like, a weight on their shoulders constantly.
I'm tired, and I've been fighting hate for years and years and years, and I'm tired of fighting it, and I keep telling Tawni, Tawni, I'm done. I'm done fighting it. I'm done fighting it.
Every day.
And you know what I do? I start looking at my stuff and start, remembering the people who not the people I put in prison, but the people that died because of the people I put in the prison. And that's one of the motivators I have that keeps me going is, I don't need people to come to me in my sleep and say, why don't you do this for me? Or why didn't you do that? I think that we all need to find our purpose in this battle against hate. And maybe one day it's just talking nice to your neighbor. Maybe one day it's not honking your horn at the guy that cuts you off.
It's true.
And that's how it all starts. Or maybe it's one day sitting down and telling your kids, you know what, let's turn off the media and let's have a conversation.
Right. Right. But did you ever, when you were hanging out with these guys, did you ever have a feeling, like, get to the point where you're just like, shut the fuck up, you know, with this shit? Like, how do you keep it there? You know, I would get to a point where, you know, it would be really trying.
You know what? There's many times that I come to, like, I was at at a church, and we were reading out of the book of John, and they start talking about how the mud race and the Jews killed Jesus.
Oh,
and all
wow.
this stuff. And it was just, I'm looking at the same book, and I'm going, where are you reading this stuff at?
Right.
And, you know, but unfortunately for me, because of my job, I had to stay in tune and stay focused. And that's why it was so important for Tawni and our relationship, because Tawni was able to tell me, hey, that's, let's go read that verse in John, and let's see what it really says, and let's remember that what they're doing is they're promoting hate and they're motivating people to hate. What you're doing is trying to stop this from happening. Right. So I wanted to say shut up all the time, but unfortunately I just couldn't. I
know. I'm only kidding, really.
I actually did, though, Tara. I would say things like, "Okay, do we really believe all this?" You know.
Right. Oh, really? Just taking the temperature.
I could say things that made people think, and in some ways, it helped me be successful at what I did, because it was, you know, who's going to go undercover and say, "Oh, you guys are so stupid," you know, or, you know, that kind of
exactly.
Thing.
That's true.
It worked, and then when, you know, at least a couple of them, when they were ready to get out, it worked. It worked because they knew that I had this other side as well.
Right.
Tawni and I were crawling through the desert going to a Hitler birthday party that we were watching. And,
the worst.
And when they got to the point of singing Happy Birthday to Hitler, Tawni looked at me and said, can we go now? I'm done.
That is amazing, though.
Some of it's just so insane, but it's like what Matt says, is you can't underestimate their, you know, who and what they are, because if you do, then that's when we're in trouble. And that's what we've been doing for so long. Right.
Well, some of, let's see, Terry on the chat asked, she says, isn't there more to it, though? Why do some kids gravitate to hate groups? Isn't it because they feel ignored, unloved, abused?
That's your typical gang mentality. You know, a person who's looking for brotherhood or looking for love or looking for a purpose in life. They'll go to, whether it's a Hispanic, black, or white gang, they'll go to these gangs and want that brotherhood, that camaraderie. The difference with those type of Hispanic and black gangs and your Nazi, you know, crew, is that the Nazis are teaching hate, which changes your mind. Studies have shown that constant hate in your head will change your neural highways, and while the black and Hispanic gangs, they want to make money and protect neighborhoods. They're both all bad, but the hate part of it is actually physically changing the minds of our kids and of the people who are involved in it, and that's why it's so much more dangerous. To stop that, we have to have the brotherhood coming from somewhere else. Whether it's a team, whether it's a paintbrush, whether it's a band, whether it's working on cars, welding, whatever it is, you have to replace that and give these kids the opportunity to learn something somewhere else.
Yeah,
I love that question, because it's like, one thing that we've seen is that when they know someone cares, just someone cares, that can be the whole catalyst to make sure we're going in a positive direction rather than that hate-filled direction. That's what I'm saying. We can all do something. We can all care about someone else.
Right.
We can all get outside of ourselves just a little bit. I'm not even saying a lot, and that can make a huge difference.
I mean, it's just, we're living in interesting times, that's for sure. And it's so much to think about when you're reading your book. Really, it's an amazing experience, and I really enjoyed it myself. And
well, I'm glad you said that, because it is a lot to think about. And if you go into reading the book and you're thinking, I'm going to find all the misspelled words, or I'm going to find a run-on sentence, you know what? I'm sure you can find them. But that's not why we wrote the book. We wrote the book so we can have this very conversation we're having now.
Well, that's a really huge compliment, in that it made you think, because that's what I hope, is that it will make people think, and then they'll search for their own answers outside of outside of the hate next door, and have these conversations with their own people that they love and have influence over.
See, I always hope that one of the mottos of the show is, when I close the show, we say, "We stick together, we win," right? And I always think, I hope for this country, that's, we're so divided, that we start thinking of each other as Americans, no matter what, and we help each other. We don't leave people behind. I was in the National Guard, and we would practice leaving no one behind. We would drill on that. Yeah, and we don't leave people behind on the battlefield. We don't leave them behind on the battlefield of ignorance or illness, or that's what I think will give some hope and education too. Giving people, investing in young people, and but yeah, I know we have a long way to go, though. Yeah, but it's good we have to talk about it. And I guess one last question I want to ask: who do you want to play you in the movie? Will
Ferrell.
Oh, okay.
Because I say Will Ferrell because I look back and think this has got to be a joke,
right?
There's no way, because when you sit back and you go to the meetings and you show up for a white supremacist barbecue and nobody brings the meat but everybody brings buns, you sit there eating bread the whole time with nothing else.
Oh, that's
and it's
funny.
It's
that's
just
awesome.
a joke. But I can't focus on that because it's really important. So, you know what? If and when this does go to a movie,
I hope so. Anybody been asked? I'm looking forward to your show coming on next week too. What is that again? You mentioned your polygamy.
It's on A&E. It's The Secrets of Polygamy. Monday, January 8th.
Yes, I'm interested. Yes, that's awesome, because it is all related. It's all. That's why I always think about, we have to get our people want to belong, so we should belong to a positive, patriotic, or whatever, American.
We're going to be talking about the Kingstons on the show. We'll be talking about the Kingstons, I think, within the first 3 episodes. And one of the things that they were teaching from the pulpit is Hitler got it right.
Oh, God.
He just did it without the priesthood, which is without God. And so when you say there's crossover, it's pretty dramatic crossover. And that's why I just think it's important for us to have these conversations, to have the awareness. And I'm grateful and blessed to be a part of anything that, some people are like, how did you do it? And I'm like, we get to.
Well,
here we are at a place where we can maybe do something different and help a lot of people.
Wow, guys, I really, I just don't even know what to say. You're an amazing couple, and you're an amazing family. The fact that, because I'm sure you guys are undercover, you have an entire family that you take them with you, right? They're also kind of undercover too. It affects the entire, everyone, right?
Yeah, there's some funny stories about that. Going Christmas shopping and in walks the Klan.
Oh my God!
It's not funny, Tara.
Right.
It's one of those things. Tawni and I, when I started doing this, we had an agreement. If I tell her to go, she needs to take the kids and go. But Tawni, being the wonderful Tawni she is, heck no, I'm not going to leave. I want to see this. And so it's just.
You know what, Tara? It's so important that your listeners know that we're just regular people who saw a need and somehow got thrown into it, and we're just regular people doing what we saw to do, and there's all kinds of everyday people doing extraordinary things, and I think we all have extraordinary in us.
Right.
I really do. And that's why I think that if we take this on, and what can I do? I can't change the world. I can't change our country, but what can I do? And answers, you'll find that inside. Right. There is something you can do.
You're amazing. And people on the chat they're saying, Tawni is a rock star. You're courageous, wonderful humans. They're thanking you for all that you've done, because you've really put your asses on the line, and it's made a difference, and I'm sure it will continue to make a difference. And I hope that we'll keep hearing from you. And will there be a sequel to your book?
Yeah, for
okay.
Sure.
I'm sure.
Let's keep the conversation going.
All right.
Just we're not a one and done type person.
Right.
Let's keep it going.
Awesome.
And let's together, with you and your viewers and listeners and book readers and everybody else, let's change what we can change. Make a difference.
Let's change the world. Why can't we?
Yeah, why not?
Why can't I like it? What did you say? If we stick together,
yeah,
we
stick together, we win. Yeah.
What I tell my kids is, if one Browning wins, we all win. So if we take that even bigger, if this community wins, we all win. If as a nation we stick together, Tara's listeners stick together, we all win. I love it.
Right.
Just love it.
It's true, because I think that's what people really want. Nobody wants to live their life, in constant turmoil. They just want peace and happiness. But I think a lot of them are just lost, and so we're doing what we can, and you're doing more than most. So I really thank you for taking your time to come on the show, and you take a lot of your precious time out of your evening, and to talk to the listeners and me. And I really can't thank you enough for everything you've done and will do. And your book is amazing. So everyone should get it. There will be questions on the test, so I'm just telling my listeners to get it. So thank you guys, and I have your website. Do you have anything you want to plug besides? Yeah.
Next door.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
It'd be a dream if every coach and teacher had a copy of that.
Right.
And, they have a lot of influence over our children as well. Right. So
tune in to A&E January 8th.
Okay.
Seekers of Polygamy.
I certainly will. I will. That's right up my alley. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.